Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the Planning Committee today, especially those in the public gallery and anyone watching the meeting via the webcast. To the members of the public gallery, I would like to remind you that this planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so there is no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future. Committee members, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Centre car park. Thank you. Before we start, I think I'll ask the officers to introduce themselves because the members' names come up as they speak, just to identify themselves for the webcasting. Could you start, Polly, please?
I'm Polly Ellis. I'm a solicitor with the Council's Legal Department.
Rachel Beale from Democratic Services.
Hello, I'm Richard Lewis, Head of Planning and Development. Paul Wielden, I'm Group Leader, Highway Development Control.
Norman Jones, Team Leader, Applications.
Helen Smith, Development Management.
Sarah Hensby, Development Management.
Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, attendance and apologies. If everyone will sign the register in the usual way. And are there any apologies, Rachel?
I've had apologies from Councillor Neil Wade.
Thank you.
Councillor Constance did say he wasn't attending.
Ronnie Burnett's on holiday, so could you use your microphone, please? That's okay. Okay. Got it, Rachel? Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Over to Polly with that, please. Thank you.
Firstly, can I remind members that you need to complete the Declaration of Interest form in the Attendance Register folder if you're declaring an interest in any application. And the following interests have been declared. In Agenda Item 4, Councillor Janet Jones declares a personal non-prejudicial interest in the Agenda Item 4 as a member of Glenavon Town Council, which has been consulted on the application. Is that the case?
That's the case.
In Agenda Item 5, Councillor Stuart Ashley and Councillor Faye Jones declare a personal non-prejudicial interest in the Agenda Item 5 as members of Cwmbran Community Council, which has been consulted on the application. Councillor Ashley, is that the case?
That's correct.
And Councillor Jones, is that the case?
Correct.
In Agenda Item 6, Councillors Norma Parish, Councillor Gaynor James and Councillor Richard Overton declare personal non-prejudicial interests in Agenda Item 6 as members of Pontypool Community Council, which has been consulted on the application. Is that the case, Councillor Parish?
Yes, that's right.
Councillor Jones? James?
Yes, that's correct.
And Councillor Overton?
Yes.
Those are all of the interests?
Yes, that is correct.
Those are all the interests.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 21st of August. Anyone move them as a true record? They've been moved, seconded. Thank you. All agree? Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on those minutes? No? Thank you. We move to item 4. Planning application 13/P/00464, and the proposal is for use of garden land at Llewetroc to develop and build 2 4/5 bedroom detached dwelling houses, and is sited at land adjacent to Llewetroc Middle Coed Cai Road, Blaenavon. And we Sarah Hensby is going to present this report for us, and we have speakers after that. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. As described, this is an application for 2 residential dwellings in the existing garden of Llewellyn-Trog. The proposal is for 2 dwellings. That's the design of the proposal for a 2-storey property of traditional design, taking into account the actual design guide for Blaenavon. This is actually the footprints of the property, so they're described as 4/5 bedroom properties. There's 4 bedrooms on the first floor and a study stroke bedroom on the ground floor. So this is the actual proposed layout. This is Llewellyn-Trog, the existing property. The first property is this one here, and the proposal is to actually access this property from Middle Coicai Road with a shared access onto that road. The second property, which is this one here, the proposed access to that would be from Brookside, which is along here. So this is the parish church here on the corner with the access on Brookside there. The site is actually on a gradient, which is why we've got the sections here showing the actual relationship with the surrounding properties. So this is the actual application site taken from the side of Llewellyn-Trog. As you can see, it's quite a large area of land to the side of the property. So photo showing the actual application property. This is the adjacent bungalow, which is accessed through Brookside. This is the existing access, which will be widened to provide access to plot 1. And this is the actual access road for the second plot. With that, 8 neighbouring properties were consulted on the application. We have received 2 objections. One from the bungalow at this plot. Basically, their objection or their concerns were the fact that there's a culvert immediately along the side of their property, and with that, the council's drainage officer has requested conditions and information notes to go on the actual application. The second objection is from the occupier of this property. The objection on there is based on overlooking and loss of privacy, but also the actual access road, which is not in the control of the actual applicant. And their claim is that they don't have a right of access to gain access onto the new property. And one of the photos I've actually shown does actually show that there has been a garage and an access along. So this is the rear of the plot, and there has been a garage and an access along the rear of the property in the past. Obviously that's a civil matter between the applicant and the owner of the lane, which wouldn't be a reason for refusal on the planning application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we have an objector. If Mr. Ronald Dando would like to come down into the chamber. Thank you. Yeah, come down. Yeah. Thank you. If you'd like to sit at the end of the table, yes. You want to stand? You can stand if you want to.
Can I stand?
Yes, if you want to. And if you'll put the microphone on, please. Right, it's on. And you have 5 minutes to speak, and Polly will time you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I live at 7 Brookside, which is adjacent to the garden at Llewellyn-Trog, the proposed site for the 2 new dwellings. The roadway on Brookside stands was bought from the NCB by a previous owner of 7 Brookside and remains the property of Brookside. The transaction came with a proviso that the roadway remains a right-of-way, enabling residents of Brookside unfettered access to and from their homes. Whilst the previous owner of my home was absent, A driveway was constructed by the owner of Llywytrog without planning permission or permission from the owner of the road, Mr. Christopher Morgan. The driveway led out from the garden of Llywytrog and onto the road at Brookside. This already gives me a problem with floodwater, which floods onto the front of my path. Should permission be given to build, may I respectfully ask that proviso be attached that all building plant and supply vehicles access the site via the main entrance at Llywytrog, which is at Lower Code Care Road, as access via Brookside would be a major inconvenience for residents of Brookside, as well as a hugely detrimental to an unsurfaced roadway. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Dando. Thank you. And now we've got Mr. Barry Davis, agent for the applicant. If you could come down, please. You can sit if you prefer, and you have 5 minutes, and Polly will time you. Thank you. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and members. Members, this application has been with you for quite some time, having been submitted in 2013, so I'm hopeful that we can conclude positively here today. The application site has been in the applicant's ownership for over 80 years, and the proposed houses, as you've heard, are to be built within the extended and substantial garden of the host dwelling, Llywytrog. Llywytrog was built by the applicant back in 1969 and has served as the family home ever since that time. Prior to the construction of Llywytrog, the family also historically owned number 7 Brookside, also known as Brookside Cottage, although this was sold in around 1974 and has been subsequently occupied by Mr. Dando, who you've just heard speaking. Mr. Dando's main concern appears to focus on whether the applicants have a right of access to the application sites from the private lane known as Brookside. Llywytrog has benefited from 2 access points for as long as the family can remember, with one access off Middle Coed Cai and the other access off Brookside. The access from Brookside has been used for decades, and indeed its use predated the sale of Mr. Dando's property in 1974, and the applicants are under no doubt whatsoever that there are established rights. Notwithstanding this, as committee will be aware, and as reiterated within the officer's report and in the officer's summary just now, this is very much a legal matter and is certainly not a planning matter which could form a valid reason for refusal. In terms of highway safety or capacity, officers quite rightly consider that the development of a single dwelling off the Brookside access would not significantly increase the use of the lane over and above that which can take place at the current time, and certainly not enough to warrant a reason for refusal on these grounds. Aside from Mr. Dando's concern about the right of access, the only other concerns raised by a neighbour is the proximity of the development to the culverted watercourse. But as noted within the officer reports, the Council's drainage officer is content that the development can proceed subject to standard conditions and an informative note. Officers have no principal objection to the development, and they are entirely satisfied that the development will have no impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents, nor on Mr. Dando's property. No statutory consultees have objected to the application, and the Town Council have also stated no objection. On this basis, and given that the right of access is not a planning matter, I would ask that members agree with the officer recommendation and grant consent accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We'll wait for Mr. Davis to go back to his seat, and then members can open up with their questions. Right, Mr Davis is back. Any questions from members? None? Steve?
The gentleman just said about the route of the access. I am a bit concerned because it's a bit of a civil matter. If it does project that we give approval, would there be any complications later on about the access in and out if there was a change of circumstances?
Sarah, do you want to answer that?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the civil matter, planning is completely separate to that. So in planning, you wouldn't be granting a right of access across that land or to that land. So that would be completely separate.
My concern is that if we do give approval and there is a civil matter and it goes in the opposite way of approval, what are we going to do then because of the access in and out? That's my concern.
I think the issue, I understand what you're saying, that but if anybody's going to build a property, the applicant will need to secure those rights legally before he builds. I don't think that the applicant will build that property without being sure. The other option is that the neighbour that feels that they don't have rights over the access can also take up a civil issue with the applicant prior to them building. So the matter would need to be resolved before they started building, I would say.
Janet?
Thanks, Chair. I share concerns, as some of the people who use that road, of vehicles going in by the Brookside access. It's a small cul-de-sac. It's compounded with people parking using the resource centre and the school, where people do park rather than walk, to get their children. And if heavy vehicles are going to use access to this site, it would cause me some concern.
Do you want to answer that, or it was more of a comment, really? You can answer, Sarah.
In terms of the actual access, obviously Lutrog's opposite the school as well, so any access is going to cause disruption to the school or potentially parents using that access, but obviously that's a short-term issue.
From Brookside, you said one property would have access off Middle Coycay Road and the other one off Brookside. Now, Brookside is a very small cul-de-sac and it's very compact for parking, and I know that area is used by parents taking children to school, and I think gaining access to the site via Brookside would cause greater congestion. So I would think if we do give planning, I would prefer to see access off Middle Coycay Road as opposed to Brookside.
Are you referring to construction traffic or? Right, okay.
Yes, Highways Officer will answer that.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Mr. Dando also mentioned about heavy goods vehicles or deliveries to the site coming from Brookside. We can put a condition on the planning consent about what's called a KEMP, which sorts out the routes for heavy vehicles so that we can actually put them to Coycay Road, Middle Coycay Road. On the other issue with respect to congestion within our lane, from a highway standpoint, really, I've got to be able to say that the building of this additional dwelling would cause demonstrable harm to that highway around that particular area. And I note you've seen within the report that I wouldn't like to see another property on there, but actually putting that in the context of highway safety is going to be awful difficult for me. So I've really got to demonstrate that there would be significant harm to Brookside, and I really can't with one dwelling, given that there was a garage there previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Stuart.
I can't see the indication there that Brookside is adopted or unadopted. Which is it, please?
Highways Officer.
Councillor, actually it's unadopted. It's not publicly maintained highway. It is a private street in effect, but notwithstanding that, it's the issue regarding right of access that is essential here, whether it be public highway or not.
Thank you for that.
Is any more question? Oh, Hugh? You have to have your mic on, otherwise it won't. Have you put your card on it? Do you want to do that? We'll wait a second for you to do that. That's okay. Is your mic on now?
Yeah, it's working now, Chair. Sorry, thank you for that. A couple of quick questions. The agent has stated that the application has been ongoing for 5 years, and I wondered if you could provide, the officers could provide a bit more information as to why it's taken 5 years to get it to come onto the agenda for today. And I don't want to get too bogged down in the issue over access, especially as the agent and the officers have both said that would be a civil matter and should not be a reason for not granting the planning consent, the planning application. But it does seem to me that the gentleman who lives next door, looking at the photo of that access, it's just a gate on like a dirt road. Did the officer have a photo of the other access? Because it seemed to me that his main objection seemed to be the construction and delivery vehicles, and I think perhaps it could be accommodated by the highways officer putting another condition in the report that if the other entrance is suitable, then that's used for the delivery of the construction materials.
Right, Sarah's gone back to the presentation to show you. Thank you.
So that's the actual access to Lutrog, existing access on there.
That's the primary main access.
That's the main access onto Lutrog. So if I go back to the block plan, so that is this access point here. So for a bit of context, so this is Middle Python Road, this is the sports facility and the Blenavon campus and the school. And obviously the access that you were referring to is this area here.
Right.
Do you want me to show you the photo again of the...
Yeah, good luck at that. And the one at the back? Yeah. Doesn't look like that's been used for some time, does it?
In terms of the actual use, as you've referred in terms of the length of time for this application, the previous site visit, that photo's actually taken from this morning, the previous site visit back in 2014, it wasn't overgrown, so it's not in terms of being overgrown for a substantial amount of time. It is within the lifespan of the application.
So within 5 years, yeah, okay, or 4 years. Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Stuart, do you want to come in again?
Move approval, if we may. I'd like to move approval, but we obviously noting the concerns that members had about site traffic.
I second that. I'll second that.
There's a second, been a proposer and a seconder to approve this application. You ready to vote on it? Okay then. Those who approve it. That looks unanimous. Anyone against? Any abstentions? That was unanimous. That application has been approved. Right, we move to agenda item 5. Application 18/P/0129 FUL, and the proposal is for construction of a new police headquarters, multi-storey car park, landscaping and associated work cited at plot C2 and C3 Plantanum Industrial Park, Cwmbran, and we had a site inspection there on the 25th of July, and Norman Jones now is going to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As members are aware, we did go back down to the site in July. This is the application for the new police headquarters, along with a car park associated with the police. The development is proposed on 2 parcels of land. The headquarters building is proposed on this parcel of land, which fronts onto the Llantarmon Parkway, and the proposed car park, which will be a 3-storey facility, is proposed on this parcel of land. This is the site. There's the Torvine facility. This is the listed building, listed farmhouse, which lies adjacent to the proposed headquarters. That's the view from the front. That's the listed building. Again, a side view, and this is the site for the proposed headquarters. In the background, you can see the land which is proposed for the car park, with a band of trees which separates the site from the Parkway Hotel, and that band of trees is where I'm running the marker there. And there's the Parkway Hotel, who made representations on the application. In terms of design, it's the headquarters is a 3-storey building. It's got a curved facade with a variety of materials. It will accommodate the offices and associated with the Gwent Police and the police control network. It won't have any blue light services running from this facility. In terms of the multi-storey car park, it will be an open deck on the 3rd floor. It'll be up to 432 spaces, with a secure pedestrian access into it. This section here shows its relationship with the parkway, with the band of trees separating that building from the parkway. We did have concerns in relation to the visual appearance of that building, and it's proposed to introduce thin features on the side of the building, and this is an example of where these have been applied to a commercial building. I think that's an office block, but just to ensure that the visual impact of this car park fits in with the buildings and the surrounds of the industrial estate, that has been negotiated. One of the main issues of concern is the security requirements of the police in terms of having a secure compound area, there is a proposal for a security fence on the rear of the building. However, we haven't come to a final agreement in terms of the form of that fence, and it is recommended that a condition is attached to any permission for further approval in relation to that security feature. However, in terms of, obviously, it's a prestige building. It will retain Gwent Police within the county of Torfaen. There will be a daily occupancy of 472 people with over 500 staff in total. And in terms of the design and the principle of development, we're happy to recommend approval, subject to a Section 106 agreement in relation to ecological mitigation measures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Norman. Right, open to questions. I think I've forgotten your name. Alan? Yeah? That's stupid of me. Alan, then Phil.
I would have some concerns, because nothing's been mentioned here about the impact upon the local highway network during the sort of peak periods. I mean, I'm aware as a local member that these roads are very congested during the peak periods, and we're talking about a car park holding more than 489 cars.
Yeah, I've read for 432.
I've read the traffic appraisal, and it says there's something like 190 cars going to come out of there during peak periods in the evening. That corresponds to about half a mile of traffic on an existing, already incredibly busy and congested road network. Now, I don't see anything in here where we've got any road improvements or anything, and no mention is made of it. And I just wondered why. Because I can't, in all good conscience, approve this as it stands, to be honest, because I don't think the local road network can cope with the demand.
Paul, you'll answer this for highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Slade. Llantarnam Parkway and the surrounding area, as it stands at the moment, there is significant amount of on-street parking around that particular area, which tends to tell you that the businesses are booming in that particular area. Unlike many places, Llantarnam Parkway is directly on a strategic highway network. You've got the old A4042 at the one end of the site, and you've got the A4051 at the other end of the site, which means that there are two strategic highways in close proximity to this place. No doubt at peak times, and I agree with Councillor Slade, you will get queuing at peak times at junctions, and I can't see that this would be any different, to be honest. We would get queuing there. What you've got to ask members, what I've got to say is that, and I'm trying to get members to think about, is that we've got all these policies that would say cycling to the route, public transport to the route, car sharing to the route, and the blame lies with a lot of the existing businesses that are there as well. You very often see one person come into those particular sites, one car, one person, and we should be saying that we should be encouraging businesses to get themselves out of that and to try and to encourage car share and to encourage travel planning. There is a travel plan attached to this application, but I would agree that if members are seeing that there is a 400 place car park there, the immediate thing is there's going to be a lot of traffic. What we've got to try and demonstrate as highway officers again is that traffic will have a significant impact on the highway network. Now, peak times only last the peak time. So 90% of the rest of the day, that area is operating well. I can understand Councillor Slade in saying currently there is an issue there, with the amount of traffic that's there. And if members were there at the site meeting, they will have seen that there was substantial on-street car parking there from existing businesses. But what do we do? Do we say Llantarnam closed down, no other businesses there? Or do we say, how much an effect is this development going to have on this highway network? The answer is it will have an effect, but that effect will be gone as soon as that peak hour is gone. We got those businesses in Llantarnam, we encourage development within these areas, and these areas are close to the strategic highway network, so therefore they disperse fairly quickly. My view from a highway standpoint is that, you know, I can understand that there is congestion, and I can understand that there will be congestion here, and I can understand that it's in peak hours. But what I've also got to advise members is that, look, I have to demonstrate that this is causing a significant harm to the highway network. What I also look at, where I can get them, are improvements. But you come to a situation where, what can I do to improve that particular area? If you were to say, build another highway, where do you build that highway to? Where does it go? Where does it come out? The likelihood is that will disperse the traffic somewhere else, but there will be still queuing at a particular junction, simply because of the amount of development, and good development, and development that encourages jobs in that particular area. So I've got to say that from a professional standpoint, while I understand what members are saying, and Councillor Slade in particular is saying, my advice has to be that from a highway standpoint, I find this development acceptable within this particular area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Alan, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I will come back if you don't mind. The problem I've got with this particular thing is, okay, I accept that, you know, you can't make it on without breaking heads, but there is nothing in here that's going to improve the local network to even encourage a shift from car use. The current site, I think I read in the report, 90% of the people working there go there by car. Nothing local in the local neighbourhood down in Llantarnam is going to encourage or entice people out of their car. There's one bus that runs every 20 minutes, doesn't run on a Sunday. It's a small bus. No one's going to give up their car for that. People find it extremely difficult to cross Cumbrian Drive as it is, so we can't even get onto the cycle path that's there. I just think it's all very well to say, well, never mind, but during those periods, as it is, the traffic is backing up almost to Malpas, and it's going to get worse. Another half a mile, you're talking that the traffic will be through the roundabout down at Cumbrian Drive, down at Malpas. So, as I say, I can't support this. I'm sorry.
Do you want to come back in? No. Right. Faye?
Can I just reiterate what Councillor Slade has said? As I live off the Teacock roundabout and my brother works on that industrial estate, he never drives, he always walks right down to the other end of Malpas because the traffic is so bad. At certain times it takes an hour to get across that industrial estate, and I have nearly had an accident on 3 occasions when I've been going round the roundabout and they've tried to pull out on me because they're backed up, and I just wonder, do we need traffic lights there? Do we need directives at different places such as Bronavon and the police headquarters and a few other big buildings would come out at different times, because we have got real problems there. And then with Rougemont on the roundabout further down towards Malpas, it gets very snarled up, not just on that industrial estate, which, you know, you can't cross the road and it is sometimes dangerous to get around that roundabout.
Right, thank you. The Highways Officer, do you want to come in again? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. I acknowledge what you're saying. The things that actually work well are to try to encourage people not to use their car. Notwithstanding what Councillor Slade said earlier, there is a proposal to improve the cycle link up to the cycle track as part of this development. And also there is to provide on-street bus stop facilities as part of this development. The issue where we get real difficulty as a highway authority is that the bus services, they run on a commercial basis. Now, I would like to be able to say, we can get these buses to run instead of every 20 minutes, every 10 minutes, but as an authority we can't, because we have got no control whatsoever of how the bus services operate on a commercial basis. Another thing would be encouraging companies there through travel planning. I think some work has been done on this to actually car share and to get people out to share actually cars, so that for every one car you car share, that's another car off the road. So there are initiatives. Unfortunately, it's awful difficult to try and get businesses to take up these initiatives. Thank you.
Want to come back in, Faye?
I just feel that those three roundabouts, like the Teacock roundabout, the one down by Rougemont School and the one further up towards town, are very dangerous roundabouts, and I think we've had a few near misses and one fatal accident, if I remember rightly, with a motorbike going back about a year or so ago. So adding all that traffic on top, I know the other side is a problem as well, nearer to Bronavon, but I just do think it's a little bit dangerous, as it is at the moment.
Yeah, not come back. Yes, Richard's going to come in for a minute.
Just from a planning point of view, understand the concerns, and there's a lot of traffic problems within the borough, particularly at peak times. What I would say is that this estate has been planned to be an estate for businesses and industrial, and we obviously want expansion of that. There's 2 vacant sites here. There'll be a lot of employment, people employed on these sites. There's sufficient car parking, we think, with this extra car parking, 3-storey on the site. So that other site won't be occupied by another business. It'll actually be car parking for the police HQ. It's very difficult, I think, to say that this on its own would cause any additional major problems to what's already a problem. And the other difficulty is when we're looking at other developments in the area, residential, shopping proposals, if we place a marker here that we don't want any more traffic on those roads, then we will start inhibiting a lot of development in the area. Because these roads have been specifically designed for industrial premises, from a policy point of view, it's absolutely beneficial and acceptable for industries and businesses to be sited there. The issues of the road infrastructure wider, I think, are a problem for the council anyway, and it's hard to say that this in itself would be party to a major problem there which already exists. So from a policy point of view, I fully understand, been in the traffic myself, but it's very difficult to say that that's unacceptable given it's totally in accordance with our current policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jason's next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I very much welcome this development. I think it's an excellent use of the site, and Gwent Police should be applauded for investing in their facilities, and again applauded for believing that Torfaen is the right place to invest in those facilities to make sure that we keep those jobs. So for me, it's a balance between the traffic issues that have already been highlighted and the economic wider benefit that it brings to Torfaen. So I am a supporter. I do take on board Councillor Slade's comments about the traffic and Councillor Thomas, who spoke passionately on site. But as councillors, we have the fortunate position to have subject matter experts on highways, and probably for the first time in a long time, I'm very much in agreement with them. And I suggest that members use that expertise when they come to make their decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't suppose you want to comment on that.
No.
That was a comment in itself. Right. Next we have Stuart.
I
Unfortunately, I wasn't available for the site visit. I know the site really well, to be quite honest. I also know the implications of traffic. I'm allowed to talk about this. We did have quite a debate down the Community Council about this one, about the traffic and the implications of getting there by other means. I'm glad that they brought it up. I will reiterate the problem because, one, there is going to, I'm not disagreeing about having it there either, by the way. I agree with Jason saying, but one thing I will say is the community councillors were concerned about that. That was something they did allude to. Noting the fact that there's going to be one hell of a lot of parking down there. For instance, that currently there's three ponds down there managed by the local anglers, and they get a considerable litter problem because the parking that's just going to increase down there. So we need to be mindful of the fact that that's going to increase, because I know they've got adequate parking in there, but it probably won't be adequate by the time they're finished. If the current police headquarters is anything to go by, that was one thing. The other is that where possible we do a positive thing, encourage people to use public transport and cycling and walking. It's actually only a 10-minute walk out of the town centre if you go down the drive. I've walked it a lot of times. I'm not going walking at the moment, but I just say because you can actually walk it down the drive. It does then lead to something that when you've got grants available, Pat Bates and people like that you actually make a provision to upgrade that walk down the drive or through there. I'm sure local councillors will agree with me on that. At the moment, the drive path is reasonable, not very good. It needs a lot more maintenance. If we're going to have that level of car parking and people down there, which we will have, I think we need to up it. A simple matter of getting the maintenance on the drive a bit better and the other parts, because at the moment it's not a very nice thing to walk down there. I have been doing it quite often. As far as the cycleway is concerned, the suggestion I've heard when available grant-wise, the one thing that would improve the cycleway no end is actually to have a bridge over there. That's a long-term aim, but as an aspiration, it would improve the flow of non-vehicle bicycles and walking over from Teacoke, on the proper cycleway, as opposed to the drive, which is not the nicest of things to cycle down. Make a much more improved thing. A bridge over that roundabout would be very desirable when you get something with. And we'd like to see a bridge also down on the B&Q roundabout, because as it is at the moment, you've got to run for it. It's not the nicest of things to come across. There are two ways of getting across. One is to come across that roundabout. It's not pedestrian friendly, but if you want to come across from the cycleway, that is the only way to do it, to run across the road and hope you don't go. If you can see any way to make that more fit for purpose, I would support that, i.e. I don't think lights or anything, but cutting back the hedges and making it more visible might help. I used to, before my leg went, use that fairly regularly. So if people are coming up from Newport to access that site more, the other aspect of it is that there might be other ways of getting up to that site from Cwmbran Town Centre, not using the drive. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Does anybody want to answer that? Highways Officer Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are longer-term aspirations to improve the cycle network throughout Torfaen, and some of those aspirations could include grade separation at crossing points in the longer term. What we've proposed as part of this proposal is upgrading the cycle network to the canal. So it's not just as far as Cwmbran Drive, taking you to the overgrown path that leads behind the factory units there. I've been there, and it's not very good. But if it is adopted highway network, I can take that on board. But the proposal as part of this application is to actually upgrade the footway to a footway cycleway as far as the canal, and then that takes you completely off-road. So, Councillor Ashley, we did look at something, but I mean, as far as grade separating that junction for pedestrians with an overbridge as part of this application is something that the Highway Authority need to address in the longer term, to be honest. Thank you.
Yes.
I was trying my hand at that one, to be honest, but because it's horrible, and that is, I know, long term. The one thing I did forget, sorry, was somebody mentioned buses as well. I use those buses regularly there. There are 2 buses that go through that route, 15 and the 23 from the town centre, if I remember rightly. I would suggest very strongly when you have when your officers has a conversation, they do look at a better way of using them, because the one thing that's actually missing from that little setup is something connecting through to Hentless. It would then solve the problem that we have with people going up to the cemetery, because what's not there is some version of a circular route in Cwmbran, which we used to have with the Formula 25 bus that went up to Hentless. That's missing, and I really think somebody ought to talk to the bus companies about it, because that would then put a circular route in and would use the local buses, not the ones that go to Newport, because to get the 15 is the one that goes through and then straight up the drive, and the other thing you would be useful there is 1 bus stop there at the moment. You might need to put 2 bus stops in there. I know, because I use them. It's not a bad bus service. Whether it would take the volume of people in there that might want to use it, and bigger buses and all the rest of it. But I would suggest that somebody does look at something, maybe a circular route in there, then you're killing about 2 or 3 birds with 1 stone as well. So we'll bring that one in there as well, but that maybe it's a suggestion.
Right, thank you. Highways Officer again, Paul, please. Thank you.
It's just some information for members. The 15 and 23 service parcel site, it's a commercial operation, and I mean, personally, I think that with all that development around there and all those factory units and and this new headquarters there now, it commercially makes sense to improve the bus service through there. And a difficulty you would always get with a round route service, say for instance the Hentless service, which was the Route 25. That's now community transport, and that was taken from there because there just wasn't the patronage. But hopefully here, with this new development, there could be some patronage, which hopefully would then improve the service. But we can talk to the bus companies about that and make them aware of the amount of development that is particularly around that particular area.
But the obvious thing is, with the circular service, bearing in mind you've got the new hospital up there as well, but I've said this quite a while, I'm risk of boring people with it, but there is potential for putting a new bus service in there to do something, and I know it's commercial, well aware of that, but there are certain other bus companies that have been making a thing about this at the moment and giving people what they want. Maybe that's something we need to look at.
Right. Thank you, Stuart. Next we've got Hugh.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A number of points, actually. I don't mean to be pedantic, but if I can pick up on a couple of things that should be pointed out as corrections from earlier comments and answers. The councillor at the back mentioned the number of parking spaces as 489, and on page 29 it does confirm that there will in fact be a total of 489 parking spaces, but 436 of those will be within the multi-storey car park. So just for the sake of clarity, the council at the back was right, there will be 489 in total. So that is quite a significant number of cars. So I do share his concerns on the traffic issues that have already been raised by 2 other councillors, so I'm not going to go over that again. It was mentioned also, curiously, that it would bring new employment to the area.
And I was curious about that because I would have thought that the employees would have been relocating from the existing police headquarters off the dual carriageway. Obviously, where it was sited originally, it was an ideal location because of the proximity to that dual carriageway, allowing police vehicles to move up and down the length of Torvine on the dual carriageway. And I would assume that they're still going to ultimately end up tracking back from that location ultimately to get back up on the dual carriageway as a conduit for going up and down throughout the borough. So that was just part and parcel of the traffic concerns. It was also mentioned that per the LDP the site had been earmarked for commercial use. However, I would feel that general commercial use, such as like a warehouse or something, would have a considerably reduced number of employees working from that particular site. The issue has been raised by the neighbouring hotel, the Parkway, over tree planting, and that should be taken into consideration as a means of breaking up the views from the Parkway, I feel. Also, two major concerns, the biggest concerns in fact that I've got, and if I can refer councillors please to page 28 of the report, under local development plan, policy BW1 provides borough-wide general policy on development proposals with criteria covering amenity and design, natural environment and the built environment. And then LDP policy S4 seeks that the new development must have full regard to the context of the local natural and built environment again, and its special features, including a criterion on sustainable design and promoting a mix of uses. It's unfortunate, I feel, that the projection doesn't have an artist's impression of what the police headquarters should look like. The plan is a bit blurry in the black and white. But I will accept the officer's commentary, thus the fact that this plan has been reviewed and has been deemed to be of merit. Those comments in particular, though, are confined to the design of the police headquarters building themselves, which obviously looks like the architect has spent some considerable time in putting together, which is the complete opposite to the car park, which looks like it has been drawn up by a police constable on the back of a fag packet or an envelope, with the little stick line drawings. I think, and this point was picked up by Torvine's officers, to be fair, in terms of the LDP, by going back and objecting to the original plans that were submitted and asking for the so-called things, the cladding on the side of the building. In the photograph shown as an example, the cladding was shown to be complete. On the proposed submitted application, it's like hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, miss on the plan. So whilst there would be some degree of screening, you would still be able to see the cars visible where there's a gap between the proposed screens. And that was a major concern for me in terms of the submission of the design of the car park. I felt it would be an eyesore rather than an addition and enhance the local area. And finally, the last concern I have is the concern that the officers have not asked us to give due consideration to at this planning meeting, because the application has already been amended twice and is still up for further negotiation, and that is the issue of the security perimeter and the context of what the boundary itself is going to consist of. So I have concerns over that. I would have liked to have seen designs for that included as part of the planning application, so as members we could either approve or disapprove the application, seeing the impact on the environment, the overall impact on environment, the visual assessment of that, of what this 10 metre high, or 10, sorry, not 10 metre high, but 10 metre security boundary is going to be. Thank you, Chair.
Right, it'll probably come back to planning for the security fence.
Can I just address that last?
Yes, if you want to come in first. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, we've been working with the police quite hard. Just to take up the point of the car park, we shared those concerns about design. We feel that the amendments that have been made with the fins, yes, they're hit and miss, but when you look at it, it will obscure the car park behind it quite effectively. We feel, from a design point of view, and where the building actually is, that's acceptable. But obviously it's for members to take a view on that. But with the security fence, that was also one of the issues that we had. We've explored alternatives with the police. We came to an agreement that because it was just the fence, we agree that there needs to be security around that building in principle. And there are alternatives that we can look at. So we opted to bring the main proposal to members, condition the fence, but I would propose that when the fence design does come in, that we would then bring that back to members so that they can look at it and make a decision on that before it's finally approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Who wants to come in next? Norman, do you want to?
Just on... Sorry, Chair, just on a couple of points in terms... going back to the car parking issue. I think on page 41, what is stated there in terms of the number of staff that will be employed at the police headquarters. They will work varying shift patterns, and that is the pattern now. So the traffic flows will be spread out throughout the day. And in terms of whilst it's not new employment to Torvine in terms of the introduction of this police headquarters, what it does do is to maintain that employment within the county borough, so that people who are local employees don't then have to travel outside to Newport or to Monmouthshire or wherever Gwent may look for an alternative site. So that is, for us an important consideration, to keep that employment base in the county borough on a parcel of land which is an allocated parcel of land within the allocated in the LDP. Councillor Bevan highlighted some of the policies in page listed on page 28. However, if you see LDP policy EET1 allocates 16.7 hectares of land within the Llantarnam Park for employment sites. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You want to come back in, Hugh?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick things. So, I accept that it's a valid point that's been raised by the officer to say that we are retaining that employment force within Torvine rather than risking losing it to potentially a neighbouring area. But it's not essentially new employment created. And I also accept the fact that the site has been earmarked. The point was raised. I don't know whether with a commercial usage the officers would have further information in terms of percentage for average employees employed on a particular acre site or hectare site. But that was the point I was getting at, was it was a high concentration, a high number. In fact, the report actually goes on further to say there's over 500 employees. I've lost the page it was on there. But, so it's actually nearly 100 higher than we've actually got that car parking spaces allocated for, which would take into account some of them obviously working shift patterns. But I take on board the officer's comments, but I still don't feel I'm able to support the application in its current form, I'm afraid. Whilst I would accept the application for the headquarters, I think the fact that the car park looks awful, and more consideration should have been given to the design of that. And even the council officer has picked up on that to refuse the original application. I still don't feel that the revised one goes far enough, and the issues of traffic haven't gone away, and also the security boundary. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Do you want to comment again, Norman? Or?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the car park, what we've got shown there is an illustration of the type of fin feature that is proposed to be used on the car park. The original proposal was a fairly bland exterior. We haven't got slides of that. However, it felt that needed upgrading, and it's a fairly common feature to upgrade existing offices and car parks where it has been installed, and we felt that would upgrade it in a manner whereby it wouldn't look stark. There would be a careful colour choice, and it just would uplift what is, after all, a fairly functional utilitarian building used for parking cars. So that's where we were coming from. Chair.
I just come in, Chair. Sorry, very, very quickly, but as reference has been made back to that photograph again, just as a final, very quick point, very quick. I promise I'll be very quick. On the planning application, it's more like this, with one there and then a miss and then the next one, right? As you can see on the drawing, if we can go back to the photograph now, please. This design here, where the panels are more complete, but with just one or two areas left blank, I feel personally that design would be far more conducive than this one, because you'll be able to see all the parked vehicles through these gaps there. Thank you. I've nothing further on that.
Yeah, that's just a personal observation, you know, that's a personal choice by you. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, it's the planners have accepted it as a design. So, yes, yeah, Richard wants to come in. Yes. No.
Just wanted to point out that the actual finials there, the spacing is exactly the same. It's just perspective of looking at it. So if you're looking head on, you see it more on the left-hand side, but you move slightly to the side of it, and it looks more like a complete feature. So it's the same cladding, but as you move around the building, it has different effects.
Right, I think it's time to move on. The next question comes from Alan.
I just had a couple of observations on what people had said so far, so I'll be very brief. I don't really want a response. Three things. I've already contacted Stagecoach. They've got no intention whatsoever of improving the bus service down there. That'll be the first thing. Second, I've got no objection whatsoever of developing Lantern further, but what I would have expected was some sort of infrastructure improvements to go with it. Similarly to when the Red Road estate was sort of conceived, we had an improvement to Woodland Roundabout to improve the traffic there and improve the congestion. Third, as far as policy goes, I believe under the Traffic Management Act, this authority has a statutory duty to, let me just look at the wording, to secure the expeditious movement of traffic on the authority's road network. And I'm going to paraphrase the next bit. The action which the authority may take in performing that duty includes the avoidance, elimination or reduction of road congestion or other disruption to the movement of traffic on their road network. And to me, we're going to be adding to it, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, Alan. Does anybody want to come in on that? Thank you, Paul.
I can understand, Aaron, that there are certain applications, but particularly with housing development, that we can secure bigger highway improvements. Housing generates money, for want of a better word, and I can understand your point about traffic management and the Traffic Management Act and the responsibility of highway authorities, yes, we have a responsibility to improve the highway and to look at congestion on the highway, and we do. What we cannot expect is individual planning applications to fix all the ills that are on the highway network. That's the responsibility of the highway authority as traffic manager, and that actually a lot of times comes down to what is happening on the highway network and what accidents are on the highway network, and a lot of it is linked to personal injury accidents. So just to advise members again, it's awful difficult to get substantial improvements and to prove that those improvements are necessary as a consequence of a single development. Sometimes they can, if there is a strategic new significant development going in an area, and myself and Richard and planning officers work closely to get what improvements we can in a particular area, and that's not just highway improvements that are other, as we would call Section 106 improvements that you could get as well, but that is as part of a larger development area. It's also difficult for single planning applications to get those to fix all of the ills that are on the highway network. That quite rightly comes down to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The next one is Stuart.
I come back to this affect the landscape round here, nature and the fence, and obviously there was some concern by yourselves about it looking a little bit like Colditz, I think, description of prison. And I noticed the current police HQ doesn't have a security fence whatsoever. Was that an upgrade they went for in terms of current security concerns or what? But the other thing is that we've got a landscape down there which, description-wise, coming out from the Abbey and that is described as parklands. Is this going to be somewhat obtrusive on the style of landscape around there? Because at the moment, I know we've got 3-4-story buildings with technical and places like that, but generally it's quite open and quite a pleasant style of landscape. And obviously something like a multi-storey car park and something that looks a little bit like security fencing down there, it's going to be quite obtrusive in terms of what people look at. The current buildings that we've got down there on that park, most of them are sort of fairly low level and behind things. They don't sort of intrude as much as they do, though they're quite large, some of them. I'm just wondering about what we're doing with that landscape down there. It's not a concern I've voiced before, but it is important that we keep the things appropriate as well, isn't it, for where we are. We're not building huge skyscrapery things there, although that car park's getting big as well, isn't it? I just wonder what we're looking at in terms of design and function of what we've got down there, and obviously the security fences start, and you've mentioned that yourselves there, in terms of what's appropriate in that landscape. Can I have a comment on that, please?
Right. Richard, are you going to comment on it or?
In terms of the security, because this is a new facility, the police are obviously taking advice from their security advisors. We know what the current situation is in terms of problems that this country is experiencing, and I don't think I would want to question the need to provide security, particularly given it's a new facility that can be built in rather than something that's added later. So whilst we've actually opposed fencing, security fencing on this estate in the past, simply because we didn't want it to look like a prison camp, but given the particular issues with the police HQ, we feel that in principle we have to accept that, but we are trying to get the best we can in terms of that security fence. As I say, as a condition, we will expect full details and they'll be brought to members. With regard to the car park, we would love, as planners, always to see a stone-built car park with lovely landscaping all around it, but costs will prohibit that. So we've got to work in the constraints that the police have as well. We weren't happy with the original car park. We have got further landscaping. There is a landscaping scheme as part of this. And as I say, we feel as officers, that the added extras onto the car park, whilst it's not brilliant, it's not ideal, we feel that it becomes an acceptable development, taking everything else into account. But it is obviously a member decision. We can only recommend what we feel is the right course of action. And our strong recommendation is this proposal is acceptable.
Can I just come back very briefly? So, with regard to the security fences, now, is it done in such a way, because obviously a lot of these things are done using ditches and bunds and various bits and pieces, so it's not obtrusive even if it's there. I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, but there are ways that you can do using bunds, ditches and rest, so it doesn't poke out quite, or it's coloured in such a way that it's not obtrusive.
We've looked at several proposals. The one with there needs to be some sort of retaining wall because the land is at different levels. The police HQ site is slightly higher than the road, so there'll need to be a retaining wall. There's been a proposal for a stone wall with fencing over that and above. A proposal for a brickwork finish to match the police HQ with a fence above. But as I said, we wanted to explore all those alternatives before we made a specific decision on that. So, as I said, in principle we accept the need, but we wanted to explore all those opportunities of trying to make it, it's going to be a security fence, and it's not going to look great, but we are trying to make sure that it's the best that we can get.
Thank you. Janet?
Thank you, Chair. My question is quite short, really. Are you pleased that Gwent Police want to remain within Torvine, but as council we've all raised concerns around the highways issues. Did they at any time consider any other sites within the borough, possibly the Mamilad site with Park Davis and its access onto a dual carriageway?
I'm not honestly aware of other sites, because when this one was proposed, we felt it was entirely acceptable because of the policy base and because these areas of land were meant for business, and therefore it was in accordance with policy. But whether they considered other sites, I don't know, honestly.
Thank you, Richard.
Gaynor? Thank you.
I would just like to state that the traffic at peak times is not just like these roundabouts. It's horrendous everywhere, every city and every town. So it can't stop you from building development because of the peak times. And I've listened to what the colleagues have said and the officers have said, and I'd like to recommend this for approval.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, it's been seconded. Now, there are more speakers. Yes, I know. So I was just going to say, there's 4 more people who would like to ask questions. No, it had been proposed, so if it's been seconded, we know, it's been seconded, ready for, vote or whatever comes up later. You're next on the list, actually, Richard, to ask you questions.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. I recognise that there are major caveats concerning traffic volume and landscaping, but to weighing that up against the retention of 500 quality jobs in the county, which obviously have an ancillary economic effect. It boosts the economy of Cwmbran quite to a considerable level, especially considering that Cwmbran has been chosen to be the economic hub for the valley by the Welsh Government in its proposals for regeneration. Despite major caveats, I would like to support the application, Madam Chairman.
Right, thank you, Richard. Hugh, I've got you on the list. Can you be brief, please, Hugh?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for permitting me to come back in again. It was just to pick up on the 2 points that were raised by the former 2 councillors. Stuart, when he says about the treatment and the sensitivity of the development in context of the surrounding area, that is in the LDP as well, as it says. And it does actually say in the report on the top of page 43, the issue of the security fence was raised at the pre-application stage, and the police were advised that enclosures would not be acceptable on Llantarnam Parkway. The report further goes on to say in the next paragraph, it is fully accepted the police have security needs, which I'm sure no one would disagree with here, but the design of this structure is not considered to be acceptable, and due to its height coupled with the materials proposed, it would have a significant detrimental impact on the open character of the industrial park, which leads on to the point that was raised by the councillor who spoke after Stuart, say, would it not be more appropriate, given the high security nature of this particular application, for this to be considered on a different site?
Right, I think Norman will come in on this for us to answer that.
Yeah,
thank you.
In relation to the pre-application advice, and it is set out on page 43, as Councillor Bevan has said, that we advise that enclosures would not be acceptable on Llantarnam Parkway. However, the following sentence: the front elevation of the proposed police HQ would retain the open character of the area fronting onto Llantarnam Parkway. So Llantarnam Parkway is fairly open. It's in places green along the main spine road through the industrial estate, and we see that as an important feature, and this wouldn't impinge significantly on that open character or the visual appearance of the industrial estate. Whilst it's accepted, some of the security feature would be visible when you're travelling along. It won't actually front onto the Llantarnam Parkway. So in relation to that, we think this approach in terms of having further discussions with the police in terms of the actual design is satisfactory. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Norman.
I just, with that, Chair, with that response in mind, if it's not going to be enclosed at the front, if it's going to be open at the front, but there's going to be a perimeter boundary at the back, what is the applicant's view on that in terms of it satisfying? Because the report mentions somewhere about Home Office guidelines. So what does our proposed solution, does it satisfy the applicant in terms of the Home Office guidelines?
Do you want to come back in, Norman?
Chair, excuse me, I have to depart. Can I just put on record my support for the approval before I go, please? Thank you.
I don't know whether you can do that. I'll have advice. You will not be able to cast a vote. We can note it in the minutes, but your vote won't be casting. I can only ask members to be quick.
I can hang on for 3 more minutes.
We've asked we're going round in circles as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
You know, Norman is going to answer.
In terms of that query, the applicants have accepted, the police have accepted the proposal so far, so they're happy with the fact that there won't be a security feature on the parkway. Thank you, Chair.
We've got 2 speakers, Steve and then John. If you could quick, please.
Yeah, finally have your question in. Before the other members when they should have been. My question is that there's going to be 630 people could potentially work there at the headquarters, and not all the parking spaces are in the car park. Some are out of the main building for disabled and everything else. And for 29 officers for unsociable hours. And the question I want to ask, out of them 29 officers in unsociable hours, what is the noise impact going to have on the hotel and the access road?
I I don't know where you're getting these figures from, Steve, but I think Norman
Page
wants
29.
to answer. Norman wants to answer.
We don't see any issues in terms of cars travelling from that facility during the evening. That hasn't been raised as an issue by, I don't think the Parkway have raised it. So it would just be normal vehicle use.
Page in the report on page 29, they'll be working on sociable hours, so it'll be late evenings, early mornings, so that will have an impact on the noise because it'll be quiet.
Chair, there is obviously, Cumbernauld Drive close by. There is traffic in the vicinity. The Parkway is open late into the night. We don't see that as a significant issue.
John, did you have a question?
I think Councillor O'Connell's vote should be recorded, so I'll move progress and move on from mine.
Right. All the questions now have been asked, and we've had a proposal and it's been seconded to approve this application. So can I have a show of hands for that? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, is it? 8, 5. Can you put your hands up again, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. Right. Those against? 1, 2 against. Any abstentions? No abstentions? Right, that planning application has been approved. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you. Right, we'll go to agenda item 6, which is application number 18/P/04/9/FUL. Proposal, temporary change of use from C3B use offering supporting living to a maximum of 5 residents to a supported living unit for up to 9 residents plus a full-time support worker sui generis for a period of 3 years. Site address at Logan Villa, Avondale Road, Sebastopol, and Helen is going to give a presentation on this. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I go into the presentation, there's just one correction on the report I'd like to draw your attention to. On page 62, condition 4, it should refer to Hope Ministries and not Victory Church. Thank you. Members will recall that in July 2017, a certificate of lawful development was granted for the use of this property as a C3B property offering supported living to a maximum of 5 residents. That use has been operating since that time, run by Hope Ministries. This application is for changing the number of residents from 5 to 9, but it will also include a full-time living member of staff. So the property is a Logan Villa located on Avondale Road, and here it's a large detached property, formerly a dwelling. It's currently used as a supported living unit, which is subject to the certificate of lawful development. It's situated in large grounds with its own access. Here we have the layout of the premises. To facilitate the increase in the number of residents, there'll be a couple of internal alterations, mainly due to some changing some of the doorways, and also installing another bathroom. Here we have the property, which again is a significant dwelling. And here we have the surrounding garden area, which you can see, which is screened by mature tree and hedge line. The original application for the certificate of lawful development didn't require planning permission, so the merits of the application weren't considered at that time, just the legalities of it. As it's changing from 5 till 9, it takes it over the 6 residents, which made it permitted development. So, therefore, any change above 6 requires planning permission, which is what we're considering today. The supported living unit will still be operated by Hope Ministries, and in the same way as it's currently been occupied. So the main consideration is purely the change from 5 residents to 9 and its impact on any neighbouring properties. As part of the certificate of law for development, there were significant concerns with the use raised by residents, but as we didn't consider the merits at that time, we couldn't take those into account in that decision. Obviously, this application, we are looking at the merits of the application. We have consulted those who commented on the certificate of lawful development, and we have received 8 objections to this proposal from residents. They have raised that they've had various issues with the premises in terms of some incidences with the residents and also some meetings taking place at the premises resulting in overspilling of parking and noise and disturbance. As a result of these issues raised by residents, we have consulted with Gwent Police and the Council's antisocial behaviour officer. Both have confirmed that they have no records or any significant issues with this property. The applicant is aware of some of the residents' feelings about the premises, and therefore they have suggested a temporary permission for 3 years, so that if there are any issues during the process, during the change in numbers of the residents, then it would be subject to a renewal in 3 years. Also, the additional condition is also proposed to limit any events at the premises, and therefore we can strictly control the use by conditions, whereas at the moment it's not subject to conditions as is permitted development, as the number of residents are under 3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Right, we do have speakers on this application, and I'm using my discretion as chairman to allow a right of reply to the applicant, and he will speak directly after the ward member. So I'm calling Councillor Hunt now to come down and give his views.
Chair, could Councillor Ashley just make a statement, please?
I've had a couple of occasions in my ward where I've had to deal with occasions with the applicant. In this case, I don't feel competent to deal with this. I think I withdraw from this if I may.
Okay, then, if you feel like that, Councillor.
Yeah, no, I haven't dealt with over the years with this. I think I'd be better if I didn't.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Right. No, if you can sit at the end of the table, Councillor Hunt, and you know how the mics work, obviously, and Polly will time you for 5 minutes, because that's your limit. Okay, then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I speak as one of the local councillors for Penteg Ward in response to approaches I've had from constituents with concerns about this unit in the past, dating back to the original application in 2016, I believe. They've asked me to voice their concerns in the hope of improved engagement and liaison in the future, whatever the decision today. Nobody I've spoken to is against the idea of the unit to help people with substance abuse issues. However, this needs to be done in a way that safeguards residents properly and maintain and minimises the impact on neighbouring properties from antisocial behaviour issues. There has been a frustration expressed to me by local residents about a lack of communication and response when the kind of issues raised on page 60 of your agenda have been raised, including antisocial behaviour, noise and inadequate parking at the site, and questions about how the facility is managed and monitored independently. I welcome the fact that on the bottom of page 61 of your agenda that this would be a personal permission and therefore wouldn't be transferable to any other operator, and hope the site can be continued to be monitored and benefit from better communication and liaison to reassure local residents.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Thank you. I now call Mr. Stephen Peel, agent for the applicant, to come down. Right, Mr. Peel, if you put the microphone on, and you can start when you're ready, and Polly will time you for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to apologise for the fact it's me speaking rather than the actual applicant. I'm afraid he has to be with his very sick mother at this point in time. But he's given us a statement, and if that's okay, I'll read that out. I am sorry that I cannot be with you to speak in person today, which would have been my preferred option. But due to palliative care for my mother, I have had to write this statement instead. Since opening our charity in the UK in April 2016, we have seen some incredible achievements supporting many hurting people within our communities. More than 22 people are back in full-time work or education as a result of our support. All of our homes operate an open-door policy, and anyone who has visited us has been seriously impressed by the standard of support and the quality of environment that we offer. I do not want to dwell too much on the achievement of our service, as I realise that these are not the primary consideration of the Planning Committee. It is very important to note that we are not a care facility. We do not provide any care elements as described in relevant care legislation, although some members of the local community have levied this against us. We have met Care Inspectorate Wales, who investigated this with us, and they were in agreement that if we ever did provide any care elements, they would work with us to ensure that we had everything in place. We offer support and a structured programme that enables people to rebuild their lives. We have worked with the local safeguarding team to ensure that our referral and application process are as strong as possible to ensure that we work with those who are most suitable for what we can offer. When we first applied for planning permission in mid-2016, there were 93 objections in writing against our service. The local community were rallied and ward councillors spoke against our work. The local newspaper produced front-page spreads against our work. I personally took time to meet with the local community and ward councillors on multiple occasions to hear their concerns. I was disappointed that ward councillors did not reply to my subsequent attempts to engage them in any meaningful dialogue regarding our work. We took the decision to scale down our work in an attempt to show goodwill, to satisfy the local community at considerable expense to our small charity. This meant that we have been operating with half our capacity in a large property for a substantial amount of time. Fast forward 2 years, and there are now only 8 objection letters, which is testimony in itself to our service. Despite the local community being rallied again, only 8 people have supported their objections. Many people have told us how we have helped to change their perception of the work that is so desperately needed with those who are in recovery from substance or alcohol misuse. We will never change everyone's minds, as many people simply don't want this on their doorstep. In the original letters of objection, in fact, many acknowledge the necessity of our work. Again, in an attempt to demonstrate our commitment to the community as a whole, we have applied for only temporary consent to allow our work to be open to scrutiny, because the local community mattered to us. With 1 in 5 people in Torvine directly affected by drug or alcohol misuse, this is a time for charities like ours to be fully supported by local authorities to help to be part of the solution. We have nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of. Not a single instance of disruption, not a single call to the police regarding our property, no drug or alcohol taking within our project in the whole time of running. We have had to evict 1 person who used drugs on a visit to his family. All this is a testament to our good management and procedures. As a faith-based recovery home, some have said that we are not qualified to offer support. Although not the concern primarily of the Planning Committee, I do want to outline that faith-based options are a personal choice for people who are in recovery. This is well known amongst those who work within substance misuse and alcohol misuse. We work with people of all faiths, and there is no pressurization of anyone. Faith-based to us means that our Christian love for people drives us to support those who would otherwise have limited options in their recovery. If faith-based options were to be removed from the UK, more than 60% of the provision available would be gone. Finally, regarding weekly meetings, on a Tuesday evening, some local Christian ladies take cakes to the residents and have an evening of sharing fellowship with them. This results in 3 extra cars being parked at the property, given the large amount of parking on site and the lay-by directly outside.
I'm sorry, Mr. Peel, I'm going to have to stop you. That's 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Peel, thank you. We'll wait for you to get back to your seat before members ask their questions. Right, thank you. Right, Mr. Peel's back now in place. Any questions from members? Who?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Excuse my ignorance on this, but perhaps one of the officers would be kind enough to explain to me the differences, please, between classification C3B and if this application is approved, it then takes it into a sui generis class. What's the differences between the two different classifications?
I think Helen can tell us. Thank you, Helen.
Yes, Class C3 is dwelling houses, and within that class you have there are 3 sections, and C3B classifies it as a dwelling house that's used with no more than 6 people living together as a single household where an element of care is provided. So as part of the certificate of full development, that was considered to be the lawful use of that property because it was a dwelling house before, and to change from C3A to C3B didn't require planning permission. But C3B is obviously limited to 6 people. Once it gets over 6 people, this supported living premises, then it becomes sui generis is a class. It's in a class of its own. It's a Latin word for in a class of its own. So it means that it's not in any other class, such as A3 for takeaways. So it can't move from one class to another within, with the particular class. So any change of use from that sui generis use would require planning permission.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions from anyone else? Steve?
After a comment was just stated that local community matters, why in a representation received by people who have written in and received no response? That's the first bit. And why, when we have events, there's no concern for the residents with the parking?
Right, who wants to answer? Helen?
I can't answer on behalf of the applicant. Are you talking about responses to the applicant? I can't answer that, I'm afraid. I don't know what happened in terms of what contact the residents had directly with them. In terms of the events, we were aware quite a while ago that there was one event we had a phone call, but that was the only event that we had any complaints about. And at the moment, as a C3B use, we can't specifically control any events. We just have to look at you have to look at each event on its own and whether that constitutes a change of use as to whether or not you could control it. Whereas because this is an application for planning permission, we can actually attach a condition strictly controlling any events. So we have that control as this use requires planning permission, whereas the existing use doesn't. Thank you.
Okay, Steve. Right, Janet.
Thank you, Chair. It says under representations received that there's been no complaints about antisocial behaviour, and yet we've heard Councillor Hunt saying that he's had comments from residents raising concerns, so isn't one contradictory to the other? And I would share the representation's concerns because I've had issues with it for my residents in my ward, and if we accept it, I would want really good, serious conditions put on it, because whilst people might say there's no antisocial behaviour, perhaps some people are afraid to log in with a local authority because they're afraid of repercussions.
Do you want to answer that? Right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, residents have had some issues because they've made representations to us as part of this consultation process. And obviously, as ward members, you're saying that they've been contacting you directly. But the only way we could evidence that is actually go to the police and the antisocial behaviour officer of the council to see whether or not they have had any records, and they haven't. Now, I don't know why, that is, whether residents have chosen not to go down that official route and just try to contact ward members instead. But, that was the only way we could find any evidence for it.
All right, Janet, with that. Any other questions or comments? Who?
Thank you, Chair. I too am a bit conflicted and confused by this one. It does seem to be that there's contradictory representations. If you take representations received from people who have objected to it, and then you look at what's been stated by the applicant, there's a number of inconsistencies there across the board in terms of the antisocial behaviour, the drug use, the lack of a response. There's completely contrary opinions that are given, but I'm not sure that should necessarily impact on the planning decision, but I suppose to a degree it does because of where it's located within the community. So I'm not really sure on this one, Chair. I'm not sure if I've got a question, if that was more of a comment on the representations that have been made between different parties. There's an argument that would say that if they have a person living in to provide more support, the inference from that could be drawn that there'd be less problems with drug use and antisocial behaviour. But again, it depends on the degree of monitoring, and it seems to me that there isn't a large degree of monitoring, that they're free to come and go as they please. So I'm a bit conflicted, Chair, to be honest. Right. It's not necessarily something that council officers could answer, I suppose.
It isn't. They are recovering from drug and alcohol abuse, these people. They aren't actually addicts at the moment. They are recovering, and the organisation helps them to be, how can I say, reconciled with the community at large, wherever they will be living after they've left these premises. Does that help? Does that make any sense to you?
It does, Chair, and I'm sorry to have used that particular word, but it did state in the report, in terms of representations at least, that there was suspected drug usage going on, which had been reported to the police by one of the residents.
Yeah, suspected. Yeah. Well, I can't comment on that, but, well, the residents are concerned around there, but I don't think the police have been called out to any incidents, or one incident, was it?
So their comments are actually on page 59. The title does the Architectural Liaison Officer, but that is the Gwent Police. They've checked their system for any records of any issues with the property, and they confirmed that there were no major issues.
No major issues, so we'll have to accept that, Any other comments, questions on it? Somebody willing to move something?
I move that we accept this planning application with conditions.
No, second that.
Right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the application. Can I have a show of hands? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 people for it. Those against? None against? Those abstaining? Right, everyone else is abstaining. So that application has been approved. Thank you. That concludes the Planning Committee meeting for today. Thank you all for your attendance and your contributions. Thank you.